this evening. But the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce is here to provide assistance for the nurturing environment that Amber is preparing for young Jamaicans. And as we look at people leaving Jamaica, very soon you're going to hear people coming back to Jamaica, coming back, leaving some very big names in the technology business to say, I want to come back home and work. Many of us came back to Jamaica not because we had to. We had alternatives. But we want to come back here. Dushyant didn't come here because he didn't have any alternatives. He has a whole continent called India. I know it very well. I've worked many years in India. My career was built in India. When I came back to NCB, I brought 15 Indians with me that brought the technology that we had. We're just putting in the new technology, and we had to have them. Infosys was a provider. And so I know that continent. He didn't have to leave it. And you know where India is today? It's the largest, fastest growing large economy in the world. He's in Jamaica. We're happy to have you. Glad you're here. And so today, as we mark this launch, we want to see that we have significant growth in local and foreign direct investments. Amazing. When foreign direct investors want to invest, they look for technology. Amber is producing it. Creating an enabling business environment. Creating jobs. And above all, we will be exporting knowledge services because, I'm going to leave you with this one number because everywhere I go, I leave it. For 61 of our 62 years, we've had a negative trade balance. The last time we had a positive trade balance was 1966. Long time ago, too long ago. We're going to have to change that. It won't take 6 months. It probably won't be done in 6 years, but it has to be done, and we must start it now. I'm glad Amber is here because a lot of those things, if he's selling to millions of people around the world, how many millions we have in Jamaica? So you know he's exporting. We're happy for that. We want to see that you continue that much, that well. And so I want to say to you, this is a message akin to what Howard has been saying. And I've been saying for a year now, since I've been in the ministry, a year and a half, that as we get to lower unemployment and near full employment, because in an emerging market, 4.2% unemployment is pretty much full employment. So when we're there, the business, and I've been saying this, Howard, because I did it at NCB. I brought in the 15 of the brightest minds from the university. I said to the vice chancellor, just send me the 15 best graduates. I'll take them. I don't care if they study scripture. I want the mind. We'll train them. And we had them, because that's what the training I got after I left the business school in Boston and went to New York. They paid for me to learn for 9 months, not doing the work. Because they said, you think your business school is good, we're going to train you how you do banking the way we want you to do it. So I learned that, took it to NCB. Most of them now run other businesses elsewhere. But businesses have to invest to make sure you have the right people you want. So as we do that, I want to see that big companies also help small companies. We made sure we bought all our uniforms at NCB after I went there. Sandra will remember, this woman had nothing. She had a 1,500 square foot place with 7 people working. She was in a residential area. She would have been kicked out. We brought her in. I said we must choose one, give it to her. 5-year contract, $80 million. She almost died of collapse. Because she couldn't believe it. That's what big companies do. I knew how to finance contract, so we financed it. She bought her machines, moved into today, Mark Designs, that's a company, Miss Marcia Nicely, has a 24,000 square foot uniform manufacturing space, employs 140 Jamaicans, and export to 13 countries. Big companies must find ways to help small companies. Big companies must say, this year I'm going to spend $50 million or $1.5 billion. this percentage of this spend must be in Jamaica, where I have my business and where I employ the people who make my business. It has to be purposeful. Business leaders must make that decision. Amber has done it. $100 million last year to help ordinary people. What a great company. Welcome him. Thank you so much, Deshant, and bless you.
Thank you very much, Minister Hill. So our final speaker of the evening, you guess the speaker? No hints. You must know by now. Who is it? Yes. Our final speaker of the evening certainly needs no introduction, and I'm sure he's here in good spirits as well, fresh off the heels of an election victory, local government. Okay, that's what I thought. Let's welcome the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness.
I was just thinking, what kind of speech should I give? You know, should I attack Howard? Or should I just be graceful like Chris? But let me, first of all, thank the Master of Ceremonies for her masterful handling of the event so far. And acknowledge our Minister of Industry and Commerce, Senator Orvin Hill, Mr. Ali McNabb, our Pro-Chancellor of the University of Technology, the very impressive Dr. Kevin Brown, the new President of the University of Technology, with so much promise for the institution. Allow me also to acknowledge the work of the newly appointed Ambassador Deshant Savadia, founder and CEO of the Amber Group. And let me acknowledge all of you who are here. Thanks for coming and thanks for being part of the audience. And as I sat and listened to the preaching, I decided that I would not deliver another sermon. So I'll make a few points. Did that one connect? I'm very pleased to be here today at this Amber UTech Launchpad event. This initiative is a critical one, particularly at this time in Jamaica. Entrepreneurship is an essential driver of economic growth and prosperity. It is the driver of innovation. It is what drives us to take advantage of opportunities. It hastens structural changes in the economy. It attracts new resources towards new products and services, while reallocating resources away from products and services that are becoming obsolete. The entrepreneur is therefore an important, indispensable economic agent. So I would like you to think of it in this way. Most of us want to get a job and a good salary. We just want to be paid. And we will go to work and we will do what we are told, and we will try to do it to the best of our ability. But what happens when a company gets a proposition to say, for example, we can now take pictures in a digital format. And that company says, really, why would anybody do that? The greatest thing for film is the disposable camera. That is where the innovation is. What happens when resources shift from film to digital media? What happens to that business and those employees? But let's look at the reverse. What happens to the company that embraces the innovation? What happens to the people who get employed in that? Of course, everyone here would know the story of, what happened to one of our world-renowned companies that invested heavily in film and turned down the opportunity. Kodak. It's the entrepreneur who did that. So the entrepreneur is a very important agent in economic development. We went through a period of time in Jamaica where entrepreneurship died. Yeah. We went through a period of time when there was no motivation to be an entrepreneur. There was a period of time in Jamaica where no one needed to take risks. There was a period of time where it was very hard to take risk. The business environment was very volatile. It is good in a sense that we have moved past that to the point where our population has forgotten it. The conversation has moved on to the point where we don't recall that period of time, to where then the budget is being read, a question can be asked about AI. I have sat in the parliament for 27 years, and during those difficult times, no one was asking about innovation and new technology. They were asking about why are we facing new taxes? So whilst I always pay attention to my boss, Howard Mitchell, and his sometimes pertinent criticisms, I think the statements should be balanced by what our realities and our history and the context in which we exist. It is important in a democracy to have very strong opinion leaders and persons who are in positions of authority must listen very carefully to the critiques, especially the ones that are constructive. But they also have to always connect the dots of history so that no one opinion leader dominates and influences policy all over the place. And I do pay close attention, always make mental notes, if not notes physically, about some of the things that are said and need to be done. But as Howard actually said, we can't do everything in 12 months. Not everything can be done in one budget cycle. There is a period of time for development, a period of time for execution, and a period of time for which results happen. And there is usually lags in between. So, we've gone through an important event in our democracy. And what you see happening generally is that people are expecting results. And the conversation is not that they're, unreasonable, but the conversation is that, look, we have been suffering for a very long time. And governments, as Howard has always tried to push, and Chris, and we have to develop our policy at greater speed and implement at greater speed and get results much faster than we are getting. That's the truth, that's the reality. So, Howard, I started the year with a mantra focusing on two things. One was peace, and the other was productivity. And I kept repeating that. Jamaica must focus now on peace and productivity. Those are two critical things. One of the greatest challenges I face, we've overcome the fiscal issues, as you have said. We're not short of ideas. We have all the ideas. We have all the ideas in government, and all the ideas in the opposition, and all the ideas on the internet, all the ideas on social media. We have all the ideas. The challenge I face is how to get the public bureaucracy to increase its speed of delivery. That is the greatest challenge that the administration faces now. The country is going through a series of simultaneous transformation in institutions. The public may not see the big picture, the arrangement of the architecture of transformation, because the results have not yet started to come. But I am here to tell you that the transformations are becoming entrenched, they are developing pace, and results will come. But when you put that beside 50 years of suffering, people do get frustrated. When you put that beside some people seeming to be benefiting, and I am not benefiting, that leads to a kind of another set of inequity, unfairness, and frustration. So thank you, Dushyant, for allowing me to use this platform to kind of set some context, to explain to our listening audience what is happening in the country. Sometimes a bit of history does help to place things in context. And I always, consider myself to be young. Not recognizing that, there is a generation much younger than I am who have no clue, absolutely no clue of what happened in 1983. No clue of what happened in the 90s. Between January 1983 and March 2010, that's 27 years, the Bank of Jamaica 3 months treasury bill yield was in double digit, meaning that it was higher than 10%. The worst period of these very high interest rate, which was a policy, was the period between June 1990 and August 1999, when the T-bill yield was in excess of 20% for the entire period. And it went as high as 50% in May 1992. Now, some people may not know what is the T-bill and so forth. And I'm not going to go into that because that's not the essence of what I'm saying. The essence of what I'm saying is, if you were a bank, if you were an investment house, if you were a securities dealer, if you were in any way minded to do investments, you did not have to think of a new product, a new app. You didn't have to innovate. All you needed to do was to take the little money that you have, and they say invest, but that's not what they were doing. That's not investing. Precisely. They just lend it to the government. Or, to be more they saved, put it that way. And much of the businesses that we have today that claim to be financial gurus, to be some, wizard of economic innovation and ingenuity, that's what they came out of. Including those who pontificate today about how an economy should be run and how they have a better perspective on how an economy must be run. I just thought I would put that into context. So the next time you speak, Howard, you can speak on that and speak on it powerfully as you speak on other things. Jamaica had an inflation rate of 77% in 1 year. 77%. We're quarreling about, just after the pandemic, we went up as high as 12, and we're now at about 5, they're about 6, we're hovering somewhere there. 77%. I'm looking at the audience, at the young people there who would have been around in the 1990s, or may not have been born even in 1992, 1993, would know nothing about this. But that is where we're coming from. 77% inflation in 1 year under the government of the people who would want to tell this administration how to manage inflation. The government itself, during that period of time, was borrowing and crowding out private sector investment. Essentially, what it meant was that the private sector couldn't get funds at a lower manageable rate because they had to be competing with the government that was just borrowing. That conversation has just evaporated. We don't remember those days. The government itself was borrowing at rates of 20 to 50%. And that essentially became the base rate at which the private sector the banks would lend the private sector. So we were literally stifling entrepreneurs. And then we had the fatal blow of FinSac. This was a kind of final blow that killed off entrepreneurism, killed off innovation in Jamaica. So for those who weren't born in the 1990s, and for those who are wedded to that period of the 1990s, and for those who are uncomfortable by what I'm saying, it is the reality that we have to confront when we speak about our situation today. So I raise it because I want to make a connection with what we are doing here today. For us to move to the next level of Jamaican development, we have to treat with productivity. So I'm supporting your point, Howard. So we're not at odds about this issue of productivity. As a country, all of us made a sacrifice to solve the fiscal issue. That's really the macro issue. The macro issue gives you the platform of stability. Once you solve the fiscal issue, then you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have to face new taxes. The risk of new taxes always exists if exogenous shocks happen. But in a well-planned fiscal ecosystem, you put in place buffers so that you can withstand exogenous shocks. So we were able to withstand a shock such as COVID. And we didn't need to put on an additional tax. The problem with why we have to keep reminding people about the importance of maintaining the fiscal discipline is that the indiscipline of expenditure driven by political expediency is always there. Politicians are always going to be tempted to win over the electorate by making expenditure promises that will end up ultimately, inevitably, in new taxes. Why? Because the electorate does not always make the connection that every new dollar of expenditure, if it does not come from economic growth and expansion, it must come from borrowing or new taxes. And if it comes from borrowing, inevitably it is going to come from new taxes. I wish that the Jamaican electorate would not fall for this. It is time that our electorate makes the connection that any increase we're going to have in the government's revenues, in what we are able to spend, it must now come from productivity. Each and every one of us in this room and everyone listening on social media and wherever this is going to be repeated, all the wishes that we have, all the desires that we have, all our ambitions, it comes from what we are able to produce. That's it. I am committed, and I've committed my administration to run the economy in such a way that we will never become a burden on you. That's number one. And secondly, we're running the economy in such a way that we will care for the most vulnerable, for the poor. We will also run the economy in such a way that we will create the opportunities for persons who are these special agents in the economy, the entrepreneurs, to come up on a platform. I don't know if you were listening very carefully. So Duchamp came and explained what he's going to do. And Chris said, I've been doing that. And I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that because more companies need to start doing this. This is such an important part of increasing not just productivity, but just increasing our general output. We need new businesses in our economy. And how do new businesses arise? Firstly, let's make sure there's a good fiscal environment. Ensure business people don't have to worry about taxes, which could be unpredictable. You keep an interest rate policy that is stable. There's a stable outlook for inflation. We have rules-based in how we manage the fiscal side of things, and you can have confidence that government will manage expenditures to not create the pressures for new taxes. So once you have solved that, then you're going to see a lot of people come up. But then growth is not a macroeconomic endeavor only. It is really a microeconomic pursuit. You literally have to go firm by firm by firm by firm. And so this is part of it. Government has developed a very comprehensive growth driving policy. In the DBJ, we have the Big E program. And that program, I was very pleased to launch an app, a new business process for a 100-year-old company in Mandeville last week. And so far, the Big E program has assisted over 1,335 MSMEs in developing their business. It is a US $25 million project financed by the Inter-American Development Bank and executed by the Development Bank of Jamaica in 2001, based upon the performance of the program. In 2021, based upon the performance of the program, the European Union awarded a non-reimbursable grant of $8.2 million to support the initiative. The objective of Big E is to promote sustainable and robust growth among startups and micro, small, and medium enterprises in Jamaica. Specifically, its objectives are to promote innovation and productivity among established MSMEs with high growth potential, to promote sustainable and disruptive growth in scalable startups, and to create a sustainable pipeline of high growth startups and a strong supporting ecosystem for entrepreneurship. The Big E program has, since its startup in September 2020, invested $4.97 million in the MSME sector, and that includes supporting projects, patents, and improving the quality of business management, improving their scalability, improving their business processes, and including the integration of technology into business. So we are literally working to create new businesses in Jamaica. Howard made a profound point about, there are companies in Jamaica that are doing well, and you call the name of a few of them. I won't call any names. But there are companies that are doing very well. They're growing. And if you talk to the business people, there are temporal issues with outlook, but the long-term outlook is that they can invest and they can expand. But we don't have enough businesses in Jamaica. We believe that the businesses that we have, they're great, and we need to double the number of businesses that we have. We need to double the number of businesses, and we need to double them in size. What I'm trying to do is to shock the country out of its slumber, because there is still this lag from the 90s. And that psychological impact is not just a devastation in business, but it is a devastation in the enterprising culture. And we are naturally enterprising people. We have become afraid to fail in business. It is, in other words, the view is we can't afford to fail in business. So no one takes any risk, and therefore there is no innovation. And because there is no innovation, there is nothing new. And so this critical agent that should be the catalyst of the expansion of the economy, that critical agent is stifled. So the question, therefore, is with our fiscal constraints, can government provide venture capital? Can the DBJ become a venture capitalist bank? And the answer is not yet. We still have to manage government resources to be very careful. But how do we leverage government resources with private sector who they don't have to face the fiscal issues that we do? So you might be wondering, why am I standing here promoting this? Precisely because government has to take its resources and leverage it with the private sector so that we can build this ecosystem of venture capital. Where we are going to put our money is to support, as I've said earlier, the integration of technology in business processes, the protection of patents, those kinds of things where if we go to Parliament and somebody chooses to say, why you did this, and make a political issue of it, it's defensible. But if a private sector person decides, I'm going to put down, $50 million on an idea, you don't have to come to Parliament and face the criticism if it fails. If the government put down the money and it became a unicorn, nobody would give the government any praise. They would not even remember that the government put $50 million in there. But let it fail. and therefore, governments can't take that risk. Not yet. But we pair with private sector. The private sector can take that risk. I mean, 90% of startups fail. 90% of startups fail. And I believe it's probably about 1,300 startups have reached unicorn status, meaning they have a market value of $1 billion of the millions of startups that happen each year. So we only need one to be successful. That's the truth. And therefore, we have to invest in a pool, in a number. The way in which Ambassador Savaria is going about it is to try and democratize it, to open it to the public, to have public participation, to increase the kind of buzz around it. And who knows, maybe that will pull people from all over who have excellent ideas to come in. There's no loss there. Once you go through that program, you are going to be trained. You're going to get exposure. You say the Shark Tank idea. I was reading before I came here, there's a company that's a multi-billion-dollar company now, and they went to pitch on the Shark Tank. And the idea was to have a doorbell with a digital footprint. So you could stay from anywhere in the world, press the doorbell, and it comes up on your phone. And they ran him out of the room. They didn't take the idea. That company is Ring. Eventually, Amazon ended up buying it, a multi-billion-dollar company. So there's no loser. Even if you don't get sponsorship, the exposure of the idea. And that's what we want. We want to get our young people feeling now that they can have the freedom to innovate, the freedom to think, the freedom to put ideas together and have an economy that will support it, meaning it will bring resources to ideas. So the role of government is the market maker. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. That's what the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation does. We make the market. Right? We bring the people with ideas, and we bring the people with resources together, put them in the same room, and we step aside and allow the magic to happen. And that's essentially what we have done with this launchpad. Again, we did it for training with the Amber Heart Academy, where we are now training people for coding developing a coding ecosystem in Jamaica. Now, you know, an important point was mentioned about our labor shortage, because labor is now a binding constraint on growth in the country. So if we were to double the number of businesses we have, do we have the labor? The participation rate in Jamaica is about 70.5%. And the participation rate is essentially the percentage of the labor force that is relative to the entire population. In the United States, it's something like, on average, maybe 62.5%. In Trinidad, it's about 62%. In Singapore, it's 70%. So our labor participation rate is not off. In fact, it's very high. So already a large number of our working age population is participating in the labor force. Remember, we're still going to need people to take care of mommy at home. You're still going to have people who, for varying reasons, decide not to participate in the labor force. Jamaica is now at this very unique point in its development trajectory, where we have to consider ourselves an environment for doing business. That's what we should consider ourselves. We are an environment where it's good to do business, like Dubai or Singapore, where people choose to come and do business. That's where we're heading to. Just think for a moment, if we got rid of crime. We wouldn't have, as we said, we wouldn't have hands to receive the businesses here. And that is where we're building our economy. That's where we want to go. Right? And I think we're on very, on a very good runway to achieve that. But I close where I started. We have to improve our productivity. I share some statistics with you. And the next time you speak, Howard, you might be inclined to use these statistics. I tell you, it's better than being a spokesman for the opposition. In 2021, Jamaica's wage bill was $241.75 billion. That was our wage bill. In 2022, the wage bill increased to $338.13 billion. It's a 39% increase. In 2023-2024 fiscal year, the wage bill increased to $404 billion. That's an increase of $66 billion, a 19% increase over the previous year. And the projected wage bill for this fiscal year is $442 billion, an increase of $37.5 billion. So between 2021-2022 fiscal year to now, that's $200 billion increase in the wage bill. Cumulatively, the wage bill has increased. This is since the restructuring, the compensation review, by 82.9%. Now, let's place that in context with everything that is said in the public domain. If you listen to just what is said in the public domain, it is as if this has never happened, that $200 billion is not now in the pockets of public sector workers. I am not saying that this solves the problem of low wages, which we have traditionally suffered from. I am not saying that this is what is the limit that you should get. I am not saying that this solves the anomalies that exist. But the context of the conversation has to incorporate that a massive shift in the fiscal arrangement of the budget has been done in favor of labor. I will be the first to tell you that more must be done, and the government commits to doing more and will do more. But there is a parallel conversation that must happen. The only way to do more without collapsing the fiscal stability is to increase productivity. In the conversation about more, please talk about increased productivity. Let me say this. The history of wage, and by the way, no other administration has given this kind of wage increase. None. There's none. The history of Jamaica's wage increases is that the government gives the wage increase and then takes it back with a wage freeze. In fact, almost every time there is a wage increase of any massive, significant jump, a year or so after there's a wage freeze. Because the wage increase also increases the fiscal pressures. This is the first time that we have been able to plan it properly so that we can even present the budget without the pressures. But we must all as Jamaicans be careful how we exert pressure, because it will collapse our fiscal ecosystem. And governments have to be strong to manage this, not to be disrespectful, not to appear not to understand what our workers are saying, but we have to be, brave enough to raise the issue with our workers to say, listen, we want to do more, and we have demonstrated that we want to do more by virtue of what we have done. But to do more, right, we have to grow the economy. And you are such, our workers are such a critical part, particularly our public sector workers. You are essential. It can't happen without you. Growing the economy. So I just thought I would make these points, and I hope that I have enlisted the support of Howard Mitchell, my greatest critic, in reinforcing these points. And I hope that I was not too somber in my presentation. You have been a lovely audience. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And of course, we look forward to the opening of the budget debates next week. I just painted. Yes, you most certainly did. You most certainly did. Well, at this point, let me invite representatives from Amber and UTEC to come and do the signing. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed history being made. And before we leave this evening, I'll invite Ambassador Savaria to deliver some closing remarks.
Again, thank you very, very, very much, everybody, for spending this lovely evening with us. I want to just go back to some crucial points touched by all the speakers. Mr. Christopher Zaka, thank you very much for your lovely speech. And thank you for allowing us to follow you. And I'm sure you will also follow us now with $2 billion contribution to this particular project in the next 3 years. We would like that money go to entrepreneurs in Jamaica. And I know Sagicor is already doing a lot for a lot of entrepreneurs. And I'm hoping that with time, that the risk appetite of Jamaica to trust entrepreneurs, to vet them better, only increases. So more of us can get better opportunities to launch global products from Jamaica. Second, my dear friend Howard, thank you for your lovely contribution. One thing stands out from the Mr. Mitchell's speech is human capital, the investment in human capital. How do we embrace them regardless of where they are in whichever stage, upskill them, make them better, make them more useful for the growth of our nation? And of course, Senator Auburn Hill had to leave, but beautifully said. There's a lot that the government is doing in putting together better funding, more availability of funds, more access to funds, more access to infrastructures, more access to better roads, more access to so many things that is lined up for Jamaica to be the greatest nation on this side of the world. And of course, Prime Minister, thank you for your remarkable keynote speech as well. Few takeaways for me. You can give him a big hand. It was really, really a fantastic delivery. One of the key things that I took away, Prime Minister, that every economy, when it is coming out of slumber, it takes time for the effect to be seen. When you throw a ball into the air, it's not going to drop straight away. It's going to take them some time for it to go swing and then gradually come down and fall. Every chip you throw, it takes time for it to drop too. The effect is always felt. But as Jamaicans, as citizens, we also have to be patient. Because when you turn a wheel, it takes time for, we used to have diesel engines, we still have. It takes time to start, but once it starts, it's just on the roll. And that is how economy actually works globally. If you look at all the developing nations across the world, India, you mentioned, Prime Minister, or Senator Hill, one of the fastest growing economy in the whole world. Do you think it happened overnight? It's taken years and years and years of work behind the scenes at looking at the big picture. Like Prime Minister said, you have to tackle the big picture and then slowly the effect is trickled to the last farmer in the field. It takes time. Our patience with Jamaica, our patience with all the well-wishers of Jamaica, patience with all of those who are helping Jamaica to grow faster is very much required today than more than ever. And apart from that, for me personally, I'm very delighted to be a part of this mission. I'm very delighted, Dr. Brown, to give Amber an opportunity to work with UTech. I'm very passionate. Like I said, I come from a very humble beginning. I've not come from millions of dollars coming from my grandparents, or I've inherited a lot of money. I started everything from scratch. 2nd of January 2015, I had no food in my fridge. I was broke, 100% broke. As I came to Jamaica as a humanitarian, teaching the art of living workshops in prisons and corporates, and I have even taught your management team back in 2016. A stress management program, so I'm sure it is working. That's why you have a lovely smile. But over a period of time, 2015, January, I realized charity cannot happen from an empty bowl. You need money, you need wealth. Without wealth, we cannot do everything. And the same thing, I think, over the last few years, you've seen the dramatic progress of Jamaica's economy. The reason being that we've become a very revenue-focused country. And the more revenue-focused we become, the more we attract revenues in from exports, from entrepreneurs, from businesses, not just serving the 3 million population of Jamaica or more, but serving millions of people overseas is how we are bringing revenue into the country. Amber Group, we bring all our revenues home. We've got companies all over the world. We've got offices all over the world. We started with 200 square feet. We now occupy 60,000 square feet of office spaces in 6 countries. And all